What commitments have the Israelis made in terms of facilitating the convoys when they're in Gaza, and how are you, and I guess them, going to ensure there isn't another sort of World Food Kitchen scenario where they strike aid vehicles?
I think that's a great question, and that's why we have the two deconfliction cells that have been set up in Cyprus and in Israel. It is to ensure that we have our NGO partners, the UN, sitting side by side with us, with the IDF, to make sure that we're all talking to each other, that deconfliction does happen, and so that these aid convoys can continue on.
Eyes on each aid convoy as it's going through Gaza?
So I'm not going to get into more specifics on that, but I can tell you that the team has worked very, very hard to make sure that aid can come off the pier and can get distributed quickly into Gaza. We know how dire the humanitarian situation is on the ground, and so we want to make sure that aid gets in as quickly as possible.
Another quick question. Israel's defense minister has sort of come out in recent days and sort of opposed any long-term military Israeli rule of Gaza. Is that something he has brought up with the secretary in the many conversations that he's had with Austin?
So I won't get into more details on their private conversations, but what I can tell you is, we also share the same sentiment. We don't want to see, we want to see a two-state solution, and when it comes to the future of Gaza, we don't support an Israeli occupation. But right now, what we're focused on is, of course, the maritime humanitarian corridor and making sure that aid can get in as quickly as possible. Oren and then Laura.
I have a question about Rafah.
Sure.
Over the course of the past several days, since May 7th, when Israel first went into Rafah, you called it a limited operation, and yet we have seen Israel push farther and farther in. Do you still believe this operation is limited, or is this simply a full-scale invasion in incremental stages?
We do not believe that at this time, right now, that this is a full-scale invasion. We still assess that it is limited, and what the IDF is doing is limited in its operations. But to be clear, we don't support ongoing operations in Rafah, given the size and scale of a humanitarian population there. And we've said that both very publicly and privately to our Israeli counterparts.
Just a quick follow-up. When you say we assess that it's limited, are the Israelis not telling you their intent with Rafah, what they intend to do or how far they intend to go?
Well, I mean, I think the Israelis have said pretty publicly that they want to get rid of every single Hamas battalion that still exists in Rafah. And our concern, we share the sentiment. We certainly want to see Hamas eradicated and destroyed, but what we or defeated. What we continue to emphasize, though, is how you go about doing those operations, and especially with over 1 million people sheltering there in Rafah. We have our concerns, and we've certainly shared those concerns.